Awesome, 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 awesome. Welcome, everyone. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, depending on wherever you are in the world. Today, we have a super special guest that if you've been in the coaching industry, you definitely know him. I'm talking about Tanner Chidester, who was a fitness trainer. When he got into coaching industry, he was struggling for 2 years until he got his breakthrough where he was able to make 1 million in a year. And not only that, he was also able to get four two Comma Club awards in different industry and business models such as B2B, B2C, health, and coaching industry. So he definitely know what he's doing. He himself this year has got his two Comma Club award making over $25 million. Sorry, two Comma Club X award. And the interview is happening right now where we're gonna have Tanner Chidester sharing his secrets. So welcome again, Tanner.
Yeah, thanks for having me, man. I'm super excited to be here.
I'm super excited as well. Thank you. But first of all, where are you right now?
Yeah, so I'm in Brazil, Sao Paulo specifically, but the best place I found, I guess it's a little known secret. It's Camboriú or Camboriú. I don't know how to say it, but it's by Florianopolis. It's like I think it's like an hour drive from there. So it's in Navegantes area. So that was amazing. So I'm having a great time.
Wow. I'm jealous, and I'm sure that my audience love it because most of my audience are coaches, but also digital nomads who love to travel the world. And I'm sure that they would love to be in Brazil as well.
Yeah, it's been better than expected. I'll say that. I was very surprised at how nice it is.
Wow. I want to know more. Like, we're definitely going to go in the business secrets. But first, like, does your coaching business allow you then to travel as much as you want?
Yeah, so I mean, I guess I could have done it sooner, but I recently stepped out as acting CEO on the 1st of January, and I just started traveling middle of February. So it's been about 2.5 weeks or so. And the reason I did that is I had a lot of affluent individuals that said, before you start your next thing or do anything, they said travel. They just said, it's a different way of thinking because you've been so busy to get more creative. And so I've only been in a few international countries since I was born. And so this is probably the most I've traveled in my whole life.
Nice.
And it's a good start. So we're planning on about 6 months of travel. It could be longer, but 6 months is kind of where I felt I needed a good amount of time this year to kind of change things up, so to speak. But yeah, it's been amazing. The people here are great. Overall, it's good weather, good food, lots of fun stuff to do. It's very clean. Most third world countries are not very clean. It's very clean
Yeah.
here. I'm very surprised. So yeah, we're having a blast. We're having a blast.
I bet that. I'm sure you're loving it. And I think it was definitely a good idea to have a break because, I went immediately into this, but you started as a fitness coach. And from
Yeah.
there, you managed to build a $50 million business. So I'm sure that we probably have some fitness coaches here in my audience. So we want to know more about the story. How did it happen going from a fitness coach to building this empire that you've built so far?
Yeah. So I think the most interesting thing is I never planned on it. And it's
Mm.
actually funny where I talk to affluent individuals, a lot of times they don't plan on how big their business is going to get. They just start with an idea. So for me, I would always want to be a professional football player. I should say American football player. And I went as far as I could go. And then when that ended, I didn't really know what to do. I had a really good body. I was in really good shape. So I was doing some fitness modeling, but there wasn't really any money there. And I just remember I wanted to make more. And so a mentor of mine just said, hey, why don't you start in fitness? Like, you look really good. You've done fitness your whole life. You're athletic. Start there. I was like, okay. I mean, that's how it started. And
Makes sense.
then I made $1 million in a year, just really grinding. And I got the, two comma club award from ClickFunnels. And I remember that was a very pivotal moment in my life because once I had that, I got a lot of recognition because people are like, well, what do you do? Most people are business coaches, right? And so for me, because I was like, oh, I built a fitness business, it kind of gave me almost more street credit, felt like, where people
Yeah.
were like, wow, this guy built something outside of a, money-making offer. But ironically, because of that, all these people started asking me for tips on what to do, specifically trainers. And so at first I didn't want to do it because I don't know, I just felt it was not like the area I wanted to spend my time in. But after people kept asking and asking and asking, I had probably $150,000 sitting on a waiting list. And I was like, okay, I'll show you. And then that blew up. And that's how Elite CEOs formed, because it just got bigger and bigger. And then people outside of fitness were like, hey, I'm not a fitness coach, but can you show me the same strategies? So it was not planned, but it just kind of had that natural progression over time. And that's how I ended up here, I guess.
Wow. That's amazing. And also because this shows how some marketing rules and principles are applicable in different industries. Because if I'm not mistaken, basically the principles that you were using in the fitness industry, you then taught it from different kind of industry, right?
Yeah. The biggest difference, I think, when we started helping people outside is just you can't go quite as deep on every single thing. So, and what I mean by that is, so if someone is a fitness coach and they're like, hey, Tanner, what do I say? I can have pretty much a word by word script strictly dedicated to a fitness coach, right? When you
Yeah.
start working with like a real estate agent and then, an artist and then a musician and then a marketing agency, the flow is the same, but then the specifics change slightly because it's a different type of avatar. So that was probably the biggest change. And that's what makes it a little more difficult when you have other clients. But yeah, in terms of when I started helping trainers, I just regurgitated what I did. I mean, I just screenshotted everything and I just gave it to them. And so it was actually very easy fulfillment because I just said, copy exactly what I'm doing.
Exactly. So let's talk more about that. Like, I know we're probably not going to be able to give all the details, but if you can give a summary of the steps that a coach starting from zero needs to do to make his first $1 million, what would those steps be?
Yeah. So, I mean, I'll just tell you what I did. It's funny because when I was struggling, I thought, I guess we all do this. We overcomplicate it. And I think the
Mm.
reason is when you don't know what you don't know, you assume that getting to $1 million or 10 million or 100 million, whatever it is more complex than it really is. And so what I did to start is I just started messaging people off my social media. So for me, I start with the followers, then I go to like comments, and then I go to likes, and I just message every single person. And keep in mind, I'd never use my social media for anything than posting fitness pictures. Like I never messaged anyone. I never commented back. I never did anything. And so when I did that and I got people, I just would reach out and I essentially would say, hey, thanks for following me. What are your fitness goals? And I'd never talked to anyone before. And they're like, oh yeah, like, these are my goals. I was like, oh, awesome. What are you struggling with? So, what's your goal? What are you struggling with? And then they tell me, I say, cool, what have you tried before? You ever had a coach? And then I would just simply offer some help. I say, hey, look, like, I don't know if you're looking for help or not, but I do this fitness stuff all day long. And I'd be happy to give you some tips if you're down. And almost always, so that's the fifth step, they'd say, okay, yeah. And I'd say, cool, here's my number. What's yours? They'd give it to me 9 times out of 10. And I call them and I do a triage call. And on a triage call, for anyone listening, all it is they call it a set call, a triage call. It's basically an intro call. And all I would do on that call is get them to like me. I'm like, oh, hey, nice to meet you. Thanks for giving me some time. Look, like, I just want to ask you a couple questions. And then at the end of this, I'll send you an email follow-up. It'll have more specifics on things that I need more details, like your weight, your age, foods you like, whatever. And then I set a sales call from there. So the set call, I would ask them the same questions I did in the DMs, but I didn't actually care what they said. It was just to build rapport. Yeah. And then when I sent the email was like the application, because in the email I had, age, height, weight, foods you like, foods you don't like, etc. But the only questions I cared about was scale 1 to 10, how serious are you? If you had a plan that will work. And then the other one was, hey, I do this stuff all day long. I'm going to teach you how to eat and train the way you want, sustainably, forever, something like that. I'm paraphrasing. If you knew it would work 100%, would you be willing to invest? And if they said no to those, I'd reach out via text and I'd say, hey, da, 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 da. If they said yes to everything, I'm like, awesome. let's go ahead and book another call. I'll walk you through the process and we'll go from there. And that's pretty much all I did. And I got to $50,000 a month doing that process. And then when I ran out of warm leads, I just went to cold leads. So, people will always say, well, Tanner, I don't have a following. I mean, it doesn't matter how big your following is. Eventually, you got to get new leads. And so I started messaging people cold, and it was the same thing. I just had a couple extra steps. So when someone followed me, I'd say, hey, thanks for following me. What's your fitness goals? Pretty direct. If they weren't following me, I would usually just make a compliment. So I'd say, hey, your kids are really cute. I'm from a family of 7. Hope that's not weird to say, but I just had to give you a compliment. They're like, oh yeah, thanks so much. And then I would just say, cool. What do you do for work? Like, do you work or do you just take care of the kids? Oh, I also work. I'm like, does it keep you busy? Everyone will say yes to this. And so also when people are listening to this, I hope they just recognize you have to ask a question to get the answer you're looking for. I wanted them to say they were busy because after they said yes, I go, does that make it hard to work out? I'm curious, does that make it hard to work out? And then when they said yes, I'm like, I got it. What's your goal? So all I did with cold is you add these 4 steps in front and then the rest is exactly the same. That's all it is. Wow. And I scaled that to 50,000 a month. And then once, I realized, hey, like I need more volume faster, I put all my time and energy into paying coaches and consultants to learn ads. And then once that took off, it was like, I went to Buzz Lightyear and beyond. It felt like, it was just, it was over. So that was how I spent, a good majority, I would say like the first 6 months of my business, day in and day out, just DMing people 24/7. I got really good at it.
Wow. And this shows a lot how it starts from you actually doing the work. Because as you know, nowadays, most people don't want to do the work, but it starts from there. And the good tip about giving the compliment as the first message, it really works because you did it with me. I mean, not you. At this point was probably your setter that sent me one of my images and said, oh, this is a nice travel picture. Where were you? And that's how the conversation started. And it sounded very genuine.
It's connection. It's connection. And so like the way I've always described it is, can you scale something unscalable? Because a lot of people will say, well, I don't want to do that because it's hard or it takes effort. But the thing is when you do those things, 99% of other people are not. And so it really helps you stand out because people, it's what you think. You're like, wow, like they took time to look at my profile. They looked at something specific and it just comes off more authentic. And that's really with social media specifically, just the way it's progressing. People are just screaming for authenticity, right? They just want real. And so I think that comes off in a very genuine way.
I love this. Absolutely. Absolutely. And let's talk about the mindset because I also read your book, by the way, called Infinite Income. Fantastic book. And I like that at the beginning you talk about your story in college where you got bullied, then you started to work out, you become bigger, and no one bullied you anymore, basically. So my question is, what is the mindset? What is the one thing in terms of mindset that help people become successful?
So someone quoted this, I'll paraphrase it, but I thought it was very accurate. They said the most successful people on earth have the insecurity that they'll never be good enough, but also the confidence that they can do it. And so for me, I really relate to that because I actually remember the first person I saw that was killing it online was Billie Jean. I remember the ad. He was in a mansion in San Diego on the water. And he was like, why does a janitor make less than a doctor? And that was the ad. I can remember it to this day. And I remember seeing that ad and I just said, man, what does this guy know that I don't? Not in a facetious way, but I just remember looking at him and I said, like, what's so special about this guy? Like, why is he making more than me? And so it was that really sparked in me to really just figure it out. Like, if this guy can do it, I can do it too. And then I would say the second kind of mindset point for me, or what really pushed me, is I really hate that adults tell kids. It's actually a terrible thing. They tell kids that, hey, you're young, you got a lot of time. And so when I was in my 20s, they're like, hey, Tanner, it's okay if you don't know what you want to do yet. You got time. You got time. And so in my head, I'm like, oh yeah, like I do have time. Okay, cool. So until I'm about 25, I'm not really taking things seriously. Like I am, but I'm not. So I'm trying, But in the back of my head, when it doesn't work, I just go, I got time. That's that excuse like I had in my head. And so for whatever reason, Bruno, I don't know, but for everyone it's different. For me at 25, I remember I looked down. I remember the day. It was the middle of the summer. It's like 8 in the morning. I looked down at my bank account on my phone and I saw $2,000. And 2 years earlier, I had $2,000. And I was like, okay, like this isn't working. Like I tried to do it my way. It's not working. And so that was the moment I had this little switch go off in my head where I said, I'm willing to do anything to be successful, even if it makes me homeless. Like I would rather be homeless than not be successful any longer, because it was just, I was killing myself and I wasn't going anywhere. And so that same day I hired my first coach. I paid all the money I had. I put $3,000 on a credit card. It's my first credit card I ever got, by the way. I didn't even have a credit card yet. And the rest is history. And so I just think a lot of people, it's either they get to a point of pain where they can no longer tolerate it, or it's also that part where they see people and instead of being insecure, they think, why can't I do it? And so most people, if they saw Billie Jean, you'll go to the comments. You see it on ads all the time. Everyone's talking shit, right? Like, oh, you look stupid, you baldy, you like whatever. And then there's guys like me. Yeah. Like there's guys like me who don't say anything, but I'm just thinking like, man, what does this guy have that I don't, in a positive way? And I use it to my advantage. And so I would say, so those are the two mindsets that people have to have. And if they're not willing to do that, it's tough, because whenever someone succeeds, they always think they're lucky or it's not possible for them, or they're not in deep enough pain where they're like, you know what, I'm kind of cool where I'm at. So if it happens, cool. But if it doesn't, whatever. And I've always found that mindset, it's very hard to progress because you're not willing to do anything. Like the second an obstacle comes up, you'll just say, that's uncomfortable. Like, I don't want to do that. And then you go back to where you are. And that's what I see a lot from everyone. I mean, I'll see that from clients, non-clients, anyone. So.
Absolutely. I see that a lot. Unfortunately, I see that a lot as well. And let's talk about changes, because you did the transition from fitness personal trainer to business coach, and then from business coach to train elite CEOs. So a lot of people are afraid of making change. They're afraid of, what the public they'll say, what their followers will say, if they're going to lose followers, they're going to lose credibility. So what would you say to someone who is afraid to make that change?
I think a lot of times in our heads, we play up how bad it can get. So a lot of times when people are scared, the fear usually comes from lack. So let's say there's a program, let's say it's $5,000, and the choice is either, hey, you can not sign up for the program or you can. And I was there too. So in my head, I go, well, I don't have $5,000, so I shouldn't sign up. And I should just keep trying to save up or do what I'm doing. The mindset has to be, or it has to get to a place where instead you go, this may not work, but I'm so dissatisfied with where I am that I'm going to do it anyways. Because success is not linear. And that's the thing people don't understand. So people they're fearful that if I pay for this program and it doesn't work, I'm now in a worse spot. But you're really not, because where you're at currently, you're not happy. If you pay the $5,000, let's say it doesn't work, remember, even if it doesn't work, you just learn things not to do, right? And then you're still basically in the same spot. You're just a little poor. But the reality is, even where you were at before it still sucked, right? So you usually only have massive upside. You have very little risk, but it's just the human nature. We just are always trying to run away from like fear or de-risk ourselves. But for me, I slowed myself down. I looked at the opportunity costs, and if I just hired a coach 2 years sooner, and people think sometimes I say this because I'm a coach. I really don't care at this point. Like, I'm good financially. I don't need any more money the rest of my life. So it comes from a place of, I did it my way for 2 years, and I was an A+ student. I was a collegiate athlete. I was good at speaking. I'd done sales, all these things in my favor, right? And I didn't make any money for 2 years, right? And then as soon as I hired someone, I thought the program wasn't even that good. But they just said one little thing that changed everything. They said, hey, stop charging $50 and charge $1,500. And that little thing made me $10,000 in a week and $1 million in a year. Now 50 million in 4 years. And it completely changed my life. And so people, they underestimate the power of just one little nugget. And that one little nugget cost me $5,000, but it was worth every penny because I made $50 million. So it's just sad to me that I just get sad for people because they're trying to do what everyone's telling them to do, but you shouldn't listen to people who aren't where you want to be. And so you have to do the opposite of what everyone else is doing. So if everyone else is not investing and telling you shouldn't because there's risk, it's like, think about it. What do all those successful people do? They're taking those risks. They're taking those opportunities, and it's calculated risk on top of that. It's not, you go to college and spend $200,000. What's the big deal about spending $20,000 on programs or courses where you actually can learn skills to make you money? So I understand where people come from, and I wish there was an easy answer, Bruno, but it really, to me, it just comes down to the person and when they get sick of enough is enough. And for me, that was 25. The only reason it wasn't sooner, unfortunately, is because adults told me that I was okay. And so I actually have a post I'm going to write about it later, but it's a tragedy that adults put their thought patterns into children. And that's why a lot of children are the way they are, because if they just gave them positive messages that they can do it, you can be successful, you should do this, I would have done things differently sooner. But people just kept telling me, oh, Tanner, you shouldn't do that. That's stupid. It's risky. You got time. You're young. And I wasted a good majority of my 20s being stupid. And so that's why I'm so, aggressive on podcasts about what people should do, because you don't have a lot of time. Like, I'm 31 now. I was 18 last year, I swear. And so
yeah,
we don't have that much time, man. We don't have that much time. And so I just want people, I just want people to live their best life, because no one's really going to remember us and no one really cares what we do. And so it just doesn't make sense. Like, if you're not happy, like, you got to shoot for the stars. Like, even if you fail, and I'll end on this, I know I'm talking, but even if you fail, you'll have so much satisfaction when you die, knowing you did everything you could. And so when I wanted to play in the NFL and I didn't make it, but when I walked away, when I had, I had 10 surgeries, et cetera, I walked away and I knew 100%. I said, I maximized my talent. I knew it. And so the feeling I had inside was just total peace, because I didn't go, man, I wish I had done more workouts. Man, I wish I had ate better. Man, I wish I had tried harder. I did it all. And then there was just guys better than me. I mean, there was a guy from Ghana who was 300 pounds and ran a 4.5 and never played football in his life. And I trained every day and he was still better than me. And so I was okay with that. And that's all I'm wanting is, like, I just want people to maximize their potential. And it's unfortunate that there's so many people that will speak negativity, and it's sad, because what people say becomes our beliefs, and our beliefs become our actions. And so those negative things that people say, it matters a lot. And that's why they say that, the people you're around matters so much. So anyway, sorry for the tangent, man, but great question.
no, actually, that was so good, man. I was so inspiring. Your story is so inspiring, which takes me actually to the next question, because you talk a lot about maximizing people potential, and the vehicle that you're suggesting is coaching or becoming an elite CEO, right?
Yeah.
So why do you recommend becoming an elite SEO CEO in terms of maximize your potential?
So, and that's such great questions and points. The first thing is, I would say most people, I'll say this, most people shouldn't be CEOs. They shouldn't, because I've just seen over time that the way I think and the way I act, it's abnormal. I would say I'm a strange person considered to most people. The way I think, the things I value. So even if you're not, let's say you want to be an entrepreneur, right? You want to work as a key player in a business. I think the reason I want people to be CEOs and I want them to try to start a business is what I've seen over the last, 10 years of my life is, man, it's expensive to live, and it's expensive to take care of your families. And when I think about, as I'm getting older, the question, what is life about, or what matters? it really boils down to me is what am I going to think about when I die? I think the biggest thing is the experiences I had with the people I loved, right? Because even if I build $1 billion company, I'm not going to die and go, man, that was so sick. Like I did this deal on this date. Like you don't remember that stuff. You're going to be like, man, did I spend time with my kids, or did I spend time with my girlfriend or my parents? Did I take care of them? And so for me, the money is allowing me to live that life. Like I'm traveling for 6 months. Traveling's expensive as shit. Like, people are like, well, I don't want to travel. No, that's not true. Like you want to travel, you just can't afford it. And so I want, the only way people can usually get there typically is either they're an entrepreneur in a company, right? They're a key player, or B, they're their own boss. Because unfortunately, businesses don't just, we can't just print money like the government. If we only make, 10 million or 15 million or whatever, eventually that money runs out. And it's like, hey, like I can only pay you this much. And so every person's different. But for me, I got into business to have freedom, right? To freedom to choose, freedom to order what I want, to travel where I want, to work when I feel like it. And that really, like the way I feel right now on a daily basis, it was 100% worth it. Like I sacrificed everything to get to this point. And I just wish, like, I want people to feel that, because if you don't, you'll spend your whole life going in a circle. And versus like me, I would say I sacrificed more than most for the last 10 years, but now I don't really have to sacrifice for the rest of my life. So was it worth it? 100%. And I was able to pay my parents' house off. Both my brothers are able to work for me and make, 300,000 plus a year. I'm able to help my team. I was able to build a school in Kenya. There's just things that money isn't everything, but I would argue that the things you can do with money is. And it's not about the Lamborghinis and the cars and the houses, all that shit. I bought all that stuff and it was stupid. But I'm telling you, being able to spend $100,000 to take your family on a 5-star vacation for a month or whatever, like you can't even put a price on it, because you'll remember that forever. And so that's, I think, sometimes why I get so, people listen to me like, man, why is this guy so angry, or why is he on? But I just know that you have to have that internal drive, or you're not gonna push through. And a lot of people, they just don't live up to their potential. I feel to this point at 31, don't get me wrong, like I look at other people and sometimes I compare myself and, man, I wish I was at this level, or I wish I was at that level. And I think everyone's like that. But for the things I've done and the things I know and the work ethic I've put in, I feel good. I feel like if I met my creator, he'd look at me and say, man, dude, you're better than I thought you could be. Like I made you a level 5 and you're like level 6 or 7, so I'm just passionate about people going for their goals. And I'm so passionate about money because money allows you the freedom to choose. And at the end of the day, that to me is the most beautiful thing in life, when you can truly do things regardless of price. Because if I could buy a private jet, I would probably, right? Or if I could buy a boat. Now those things aren't as important, but you have to have a good chunk of change to like travel and experience things and buy your parents a house. Or like, when my parents are dying, I want to be able to take care of them. I want a full-time nurse around the house. They're okay, by the way, but I want those things and it costs money. So I guess that's why I get so worked up.
Absolutely. Thanks for sharing. That was very, very inspiring, actually. And one question about CEOs, because first of all, it's interesting how you move from coaching to CEOs, because CEO can be CEO of any type of company, right? So what do you think are the main character trait or the 3 non-negotiable that a CEO need to have to be a good CEO?
Yeah. So I would say the first one, some people might disagree with me, but especially in small business startups, right? So we're not talking Fortune 500, but small business startups, you got to be good at sales. All my CEOs and all my divisions, anyone I've seen who really excels, they're very good at sales. Because if you can't make sales, the business will not survive. Yeah, you could have the worst fulfillment ever, but if you can make sales, you can survive while you're figuring that out. But if you're the best coach in the world, but you can't make a damn sale, you don't have a company, right? So that's number one. I would say number 2 is communication skills, leadership. Depending how big you get, So I would say under 100,000 a month, you don't really have to be that good of a leader. You only have 2, 3, 4 employees or contractors. You could pretty much just be kind of an a-hole and it's fine.
Yeah.
And that was when I started.
Yeah.
Some people might say I still am. I'm a little more aggressive, right? You can probably tell. But what I've noticed over time is that if you can't learn how to communicate effectively, and it's that book by Jocko Willink, right? I think his last name Willink, I forget how you say it, but it's the dichotomy of leadership. Because on one hand, if you're too nice, people don't respect you, right? They go, oh, well, Tanner's a pushover. He says he's going to come down on me and then he doesn't. I show up late, he doesn't do anything. People will start doing it. On the other hand, if you're too much of an a-hole, eventually people get sick of it, right? They're like, he's always cussing at me, he's yelling at me, and so it's a very delicate balance that, in my opinion, most CEOs do not master. And so a lot of most people I work with, they can grow up to 100K and that's it. I'd say 8 out of 10 people, because they never actually learn how to lead. And leading's hard. Leading is so hard. Like, to be a great leader, because you're trying to get your team to perform, but you're also trying to you want them to be happy, right? And there's a very delicate balance of what's best for the business and what's best for the person. They're not usually the same things. So that's number 2. And then I would say number 3, after that is just, man, I would just say consistency. Consistency. And it's a boring word, but people, you see almost all the time in conversations I have is, oh, well, you don't understand because I have, 3 kids, or you don't understand because I only have this much money, or, you don't understand because the thing is someone somewhere understands. Someone somewhere has it worse. In fact, as I've been traveling, the first thought I had is, man, immigrants who come to America work way harder than people who were born there. Way harder. Like, I'm actually embarrassed a little bit about how lazy people in America who are born in America, not just, moved there, how lazy they are, because they want $1 million for nothing. They don't want to work. And so I think if you can, even if you suck, like you're the world's worst CEO, if you wake up every day and you dedicate yourself to the action steps and you do it, over time, you will win. I don't know if it's 2 years or 5 or 10 or 15, right? Because the skill comes in. And so if you're more skilled, it'll be faster. But part of my success, in my opinion, is just, I'm not the smartest. I'm not the strongest. I'm not the fastest. I'm not the quickest. I'm not even creative, to be frank with you, Bruno. Like, I've started shooting YouTube, and it's been so hard because I just do ads all the time. And now I have to actually make it interesting, right? Like, wow, I have to shoot a 8-minute video, but I'm just consistent AF. Like, I'm just so consistent. And so I think that's what's been a superpower, is you can't control other people. Sometimes you can't even control the skills you have. And like, you can get better, but some people are naturally better at things. But the thing I control is I just worked my ass off every day for 10 years. And to say that is one thing, but to do it is another. And I think a lot of people say a lot of cool stuff, but very few people, when the cameras aren't on, what do you actually do? And that's who you actually are. And I just, in my opinion, is I was blessed, and I'll end on this. I was just very blessed to have a dad that understood how to work hard. And growing up, I thought the way my dad acted was normal. And then as I got in my 20s, I remember I called my dad. I said, Dad, I was like, man, you know how to work. These guys don't know how to work. Like, people thought I was crazy. Like, why do you go to the gym for 3 hours? Why are you studying so much? I'm like, bro, I want to be the best. And it was almost like they couldn't understand. So those are the 3 things. And it sounds so basic, man, but it's just, if most people could just do the hard work part, they get there. But that's the hardest thing to do consistently, right? Anyways, so I could go on for another 3 hours, man. But
man,
I'm very passionate about it, because I've been at the bottom and I worked my way to the top. And I think I just worked on a lot of those things. Like, I wasn't good at sales to start. I did door-to-door sales for 8 months, 6 days a week, 12 hours a day in the summer. So a lot of people will say things are luck, but they don't see all the sacrifice that went into it. And I just think I was blessed with the hard work ethic, and I'm grateful for it, because that's really blessed me in my life, and I think it'll continue to.
That's powerful. Really powerful. I can tell you're passionate about that. You give so much energy and so much inspiration. I love it. Do you have 2 minutes for one last question? I know we're
Oh yes,
over.
as long as you want, man. I know I'm a talker, so I apologize.
Perfect. So my next question, I think, is the one that my audience will love, because, as you definitely know, the high ticket coaching industry is shifting a bit. There are some people that says that only giving the coaching is not enough. You need some done for you element, or some
Mhm.
people that says that organic, teaching the same organic stuff, all coaches have been teaching it for years, so now it's not as valuable. So I'm interested in your opinion. Where do you see the future of this high ticket coaching in general?
Yeah, that's a great point. Again, like, wow, very great points that you're bringing up. You really think stuff through. It's awesome.
Thanks, man.
I would agree. I'd agree slightly with that. And the reason is I've been in the industry for 5 years, right? And we've been at a very high level, and we spent a lot of money on ads and seen a lot of clients. I would agree with that. And it's funny because here's the issue. So here's what's interesting. So Warren Buffett says you should make something that costs a penny and sell it for $1. So when you think about coaching, one of the benefits of coaching, at least like group coaching or even one-to-one, is the goal, right, is it's done with you. And so you're trying to keep the cost of fulfillment or make the fulfillment easier. To your point, right, now, because everyone's been doing it for a while, I do agree that if you have some done for you elements, so let's say, hey, you come in our mastermind and we run your ads, or hey, you come in our mastermind, we get you setters. That's a popular one right now, right? Everyone's doing that. Oh yeah, I'll get you a setter. Yeah, right. That's very popular right now. Or hey, you come in and we'll do shout outs for you, whatever it may be. It makes it easier because it makes it a little bit more tangible. And so people who've been in masterminds for a while, they're like, oh, I don't want to do another mastermind. And so even though it's just a little extra thing, a lot of people are like, oh, so that's where I'm going to get more value. Like I'm actually paying more for setters or ads or whatever it might be. So I agree with that assessment, but the problem is that the fulfillment is exponentially harder for done for you, and the expectations are exponentially higher. And so one of my companies right now, we actually started it almost a year ago. It's called Elite Closers, and it's a sales training and placement company. Now it's very profitable, very easy to scale in terms of ads, but the hardest part, the expectations of the clients are extremely high, right? Because if let's say someone comes in and you give them a sales rep and the sales rep doesn't perform as well. Well, who do they blame? Do they blame themselves and their management, or they blame you? They're going to blame you. Exactly. And so you almost have to do double the effort and, double the training to make sure that these people are in good shape. So I would agree with that assessment, but I think very few people can pull it off. And most people shouldn't try until you're big enough, because it's almost like two separate businesses. Like I have a completely separate team that does the done for you stuff than the done with you stuff. It's completely separate. I don't have a coach who's, hey, he's going to coach your setter and help. It's not like that. It's sales coaches only, and then business coaches only. And it's completely separate people. So it can be done. One of my buddies right now who's done it very well, probably better than anyone so far, is actually Cole Gordon. He's done a very good job. He's one of my good friends. Dan Henry's kind of starting to do that a little bit, right? You kind of move into it. And there's other offers, like Ashton Shanks of Human Media Group. They have a media buyer placement, right? So it's not a sales rep, it's a media buyer. One of my other friends named Ravi Abudallah, I always butcher his name, but he does a COO placement. So he calls it the operator. So he's like, hey, we'll train and place an operator. So that's not the only thing you can do. But I do think you're seeing that shift in the marketplace, just because over time, as people go through masterminds, they're just like, oh, it's kind of the same thing. And even though most people don't need something new, that's what makes marketing interesting, is you have to keep freshening up your marketing, because they'll convince themselves that the reason they're not where they want to be is because of the new shiny object. And so you got to make a new shiny object. So in summary, I think you're right on the money, but I think very few people can pull it off. And I'd be very careful, because a lot of people, what they do is they add it on they get very terrible fulfillment, and then their names get dragged through the mud, and it's not good long term. When I first started my business, I made very short-term decisions. And what I mean by that is I didn't try to screw people over, but if someone got pissed off, I would just kind of be like, oh, like, F him. And he's now that I'm 5 years in the business, you realize your reputation sticks with you. And so moving forward, I want to make sure I'm ultra careful and I'm ultra sensitive to people, because in 25 years, I don't want to have a rep that, oh, Tanner, he just freaking screws people over. And anytime you ask, you have a problem, like, it's not a good look. And that's why you see a lot of these coaches, they're in and out in 5 years. I mean, I can tell you there's one company left that I entered the industry with that is still a big company. All the other ones have either downsized or they're gone, like completely out of the market.
I see this a lot as well. I'm seeing this a lot.
And that's why, because being good for a long time is hard, bro. Because if you don't adapt and change, you're going to die, because, people go through your service and then you do the same thing over and over for years. Like, you got to adapt. So I agree with your assessment. I think you're right on the money, but very few people will pull it off.
Absolutely. Thank you for confirming. That actually helped me as well, was my question. And I got one very last question in terms of your future. So I know that maybe you don't know, because now you want to travel, you might just have a break. But what is in the future for Tanner? What is your plan?
Yeah. So right now, I'm traveling. The reason I'm traveling is I did a post like a month or so ago, and I paid in some way or another for 30-ish conversations with people who sold, almost all of them sold their companies for 9 or 10 figures. And ironically, about 50% of them, without me asking, so it wasn't a question I asked, just they brought it up. They said, before you do your next thing, travel. And they said, travel till you're sick of it. Right. And so I don't know if it's 6 months or a year, but the reason they said is you've been so busy working since you were, a young dude, that you haven't been creative. And they said your next idea is going to come from creative thinking, not from, grind, right? Like sales calls, team meetings, like all that type of stuff. So it's interesting. I feel way less stressed right now. It's kind of funny. I think I'm used to stress. And so I've been on vacation, so to speak. And I'm like, man, like I feel really good, like all the time. And it's a nice feeling. So what I'm hopeful of is by the time I come back, I have kind of my next idea, and then I'm going to be starting a new company, whatever that is. So that's the plan, man. So we'll see what happens.
I love the plan, and I'd love to interview you as well when you're back, so we can hear about your travels and maybe the next plan.
Sure, absolutely, I'd love to share. We're going coast to coast, or I guess tip of the south to north, I guess. So we're in South America now. We're going to work our way east. So we'll see how it goes.
I love it. I'm definitely going to invite you for an interview in 3-4 months, and I'm sure my audience want to know everything about it. Awesome. So, by the way, if my audience want to follow you more and enter to your world, what is the best place to find you?
Yeah, so if you check like my IG stories, that'll be the best way to keep up with all the travel if they're interested in that. And then YouTube, I would check out for everything else. I'm really trying to elevate my YouTube game. I have like 18,000 subs, so it's pretty small right now, but I'm putting like 2 to 3 hours into the videos now per day. Like when we shoot a video, and I'm shooting it 3 or 4 times, and we've got a bunch of editors. So that would be the next place. And we're trying to do stuff that people are curious about. So, if people have questions or they want to see certain things, I'm just trying to just give as much value, because I'm not really selling anything anymore. I mean, I sell my companies, but I'm just kind of making content at this point for fun. And so anything that would help people, I'm trying to put on YouTube and just like really over deliver. So they'll be the 2 best places.
Love it. I will follow you as well on YouTube. I'm sure even my audience. And thank you very much. It was super, super powerful. And thank you for joining, guys. I'll see you in the next episode. Enjoy your day. Thank you again, Tanner, for coming.
Yeah, thanks, man. It was amazing.
Thank you.